If you're a 90s or 2000s kid, chances are you've seen the 2007 romance classic Om Shanti Om, and chances are that you remember the film quite fondly. But that's weird, right? Because isn't this film supposed to be quite tragic? It's that strange phenomenon where we're remembering something sad as something happy. And this begs the question, is it to do because of our childhood? When we're closing our eyes to remember a time that was never even as good as we remember it? Or is there some other deeper reason to all of this? Maybe it's the direction, the story, the film in general. What is it? Join me as we attempt to find out in the analysis of Om Shanti Om. The word nostalgia is pretty relevant to everybody, even if they do not know it is what they're talking about. And this whole concept of being nostalgic is only doubled down by Om Shanti Om, right from its beginning to its very last second. The premise of Om Shanti Om is simple but also quite complicated. It's a dual narrative story tied together with an extremely cheesy reincarnation backdrop spanning over 3 decades, in what is otherwise an even more typical plotline about a small town poor guy falling in love with a girl that is plainly out of her league. A very 80s trope if you think about it. We have Om, the lead character, played by SRK, a struggling actor in the 70s Bollywood. His dramatic mother, who is greatly influenced by the industry that her late husband and son dedicate their lives to, and the buddy character Pappu, played by Shreyas Talpade. And the female lead character Shanti Priya, played by the then debuting Deepika Padukone, and the antagonist Mukesh Mike Mehra, played by Arjun Rampal. For a long while in the beginning, the film uses the rom-com genre to settle in the characters, showing their struggles and successes, all staged against the comically bizarre love story that cleverly reflects both the time period that the film is set in and the cinema of that time, 1977. It's strange to look back on it, but the film's complete betrayal of this comedic, playful, and fun nature of the first half, and its replacement with the tragedy that comes after, is at best a brilliant change in genre and tone. And to be honest, as simple as it seems, is extremely complex to pull off. At best, even with a few comedic scenes and numbered musicals in the second half, Om Shanti Om concludes as nothing but a melancholy tragedy. I mean, even at the end, the audience has very little to be happy about and more to be left disturbed by. So why is it then that we're remembering the film as something positive, something associated with the feeling of wholesomeness? Well, there are a number of things in the film and about the film that allude to this. First, the backgrounds, the sets, the feel of the film in each and every scene is like an acid trip back to 70s Bollywood, when everything was bright, vibrant, and dipped in glitter. So much so that even the second half spirit of 2007 now seems rather similar, but with a vague polish of modernity. Much more westernized and less original, until the film goes back to its origins by the end. It's actually a lot of effort for very little credit, as many of these sets are actual locations, and what seem to be actual locations are actually manufactured sets. They remind you of those terrible films that your parents love but you can never sit through. Yet somehow you are here watching a video about a film that pays homage to exactly that. The second factor to this, I believe, is the music, which is to say the least splendid. There's something about the soundtrack of this film that just hits the right spots in your heart. Songs like Dirty Disco, which is just as iconic as it was back then, Ajab Si carrying a timeless Shakespearean sonnet feel, and who can forget Divangi Divangi with its crazy lineup of almost every 2000s Bollywood A-lister, and obviously the lovely Main Agar Kahun and Jag Suna Suna Lage. All these songs are such classics that they just feel eternal. So fresh to even listen now, yet somehow back then sounded like we'd already heard them so many times. I still remember the first time when I saw the music video for Ajab Si on 9XM. When did those days go by, right? However, the one song that does get overlooked a lot is right in the beginning, sung in the amazing voice of Shreya Ghoshal, called Dhoom Dana. This song probably took the production the most effort to make, as the debuting Deepika Padukone is CGI'd into many 70s Bollywood classics. This song to me is the most essential piece of music in the entire film. Even though I know the film ends with Dastai Om Shanti Om, that beautifully summarizes everything, still it's the irony in the first song that establishes the contrasting themes for the rest of the film. Seeing that Deepika Padukone, the debuting actress, is shown to be the star, and the actual star, Shah Rukh Khan, is shown to be the struggling actor who hasn't yet found himself even a speaking role. Seriously, how many actors do you think would do that? Think about it. Almost none. Moving on, in its direction, there's many hints to the obviousness about everything we, as the audience, think of ourselves as smart by guessing, even though it's all out there. The obviously fake makeup, purposeful overreaction to situations, and the slow motion scenes with the heavy choruses all adds to the soap drama feel the film carries throughout. When we come down to the basics though, Om Shanti Om isn't a special film at all. In fact, it borrows some of the most stereotypical stories Bollywood has ever spun out, and then milk to obscurity over the 80s and slowly fade out in the 90s. But that's exactly the point of Om Shanti Om. It is a late 70s Bollywood romance film on purpose. And when you think about it, it's the late 90s that Shah Rukh Khan got his rise. So the fact that in the late 2000s he came out with this film only made sense in internalizing his previous stardom and helping him to move on into this new era of films by use of stereotypical stories. It is such a brilliant timing for a film like this in 2007. No wonder why Sarkis is considered such a good businessman, because there is just no way that he did not strategically plan this. It's very, very clever. Much of the first half of the film plays on this will they, won't they tease, stretching this old trick out of classic films to a very Indian rebirth scenario, keeping you hooked in both halves of the movie, if even through the use of exaggeration at times. But it is this exaggeration of everything that adds to the film's unpredictable nature, which is a brilliant contrast to its otherwise predictable stereotypes. Like, who can expect what this kind of film would end like? You have a vague idea, sure, happy ending, sure, but that's only because the film hints that to you throughout the narrative. If I paused the film and asked you the exact scenario, there's gonna be some struggle there, and that's what makes Om Shanti Om such a unique piece of cinema. To sum up, the journey from 1977 to 2007 tells it all. It's grand, but it's bleak. It's vast, but it's lonely. It's funny, but it's sad. And it's violent, but it's peaceful. And as is hinted by things as major as the film's name, Om Shanti Om, repeated many times not only in the film but in this analysis as well, to things as minute as a locket. Maybe that's why, even though this is an extremely sad film, in the end we only remember the good things about it, much like life. And for the sad things, like a great person once said, matters that are substantial today will be trivial tomorrow. So if everything does not turn out well in the end, then that is not the end. There is more to the movie. Picture abhi baaki hai mere dost.